February 17, 1940. Bletchley Park Station, Buckinghamshire, England. The morning fog clings to the platform like wet wool as the 742 from London hisses to a stop. Joan Clark steps down onto the concrete, her worn leather suitcase heavy in her gloved hand, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. She's 22 years old, a Cambridge mathematics graduate with first-class honors, and she has absolutely no idea why she's been summoned to this unremarkable railway station 50 miles northwest of the capital. The telegram had been cryptic. Your services required for important war work. Report to Bletchley Park. Secrecy essential. That was 4 days ago. She'd signed the Official Secrets Act yesterday in a cramped office in London, the pen scratching across paper while a stone-faced civil servant watched her every movement. Now, standing on this desolate platform with 3 other young women who'd arrived on the same train, Joan notices the military lorry waiting beyond the station gate. A driver in army uniform leans against it, cigarette dangling from his lips, regarding the women with barely concealed amusement. Behind him, through the thinning mist, Joan can make out the silhouette of a Victorian mansion. Red brick, sprawling, surrounded by temporary huts that seem to have sprouted like mushrooms across what was once clearly a country estate. You lot the new typists? The driver calls out, flicking his cigarette into a puddle. Joan exchanges glances with the woman beside her. Dark-haired, sharp-eyed, wearing a green woolen coat. Neither of them answers. They're not typists. They're mathematicians, linguists, chess champions, crossword experts. But as they climb into the back of the lorry and it lurches toward the mansion gates, Joan realizes with a sinking feeling that this distinction may not matter to anyone here. The mansion's interior smells of cigarette smoke, stale tea, and mildew. Joan and the others are herded into what was once a grand drawing room, now stripped of its elegance and filled with military-issue desks and filing cabinets. A portly Royal Navy commander stands at the front, hands clasped behind his back, regarding the assembled women with the expression of a man inspecting produce at market. Ladies, he begins, and Joan already dislikes the way he stretches the word, making it sound like an indictment. Welcome to Station X. What happens here is classified at the highest level. You will not discuss your work with anyone. Not your families, not your friends, not each other outside of your assigned duties. He paces before them, shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. You've been selected for your clerical aptitude. We need fast, accurate typists and filing clerks to support the important work being done by our cryptanalysts. He gestures vaguely toward the warren of offices beyond. The men breaking enemy codes require administrative support. That's where you come in. Joan feels the words land like stones in her stomach. Clerical aptitude. She solved probability theorems that baffled her male professors. She published a paper on number theory at 19. The woman beside her, she'd learned her name was Margaret during the lorry ride, speaks fluent German and studied linguistics at Oxford. Excuse me, sir. Joan ventures, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Some of us have mathematical training. Might we be of use in the actual cryptographic work? The commander's expression shifts from boredom to something approaching pity. Miss? Clark, sir. Joan Clark. Miss Clark, the cryptanalysis being conducted here requires the highest levels of mathematical and logical reasoning. It's highly specialized work. Frankly, beyond the scope of what we'd expect from the fairer sex, even university graduates. He softens his tone, as if explaining arithmetic to a child. Your education is admirable, truly, but cracking enemy ciphers is a rather different matter than passing examinations. Now, Mrs. Henderson will show you to your workstations. 3 weeks pass in a fog of tedium. Joan sits at her assigned desk in HUD 8, transcribing intercepted German naval communications onto index cards, filing them by time and frequency. The work is mind-numbing, mechanical, a waste of everything she's capable of. But her desk sits 15 feet from the main cryptanalysis table, and Joan has excellent hearing. She listens. She learns. The Enigma machine, she discovers, is a beast of elegant complexity. A German encryption device resembling a typewriter, equipped with 3 rotating wheels. rotors, that scramble each letter through billions of possible combinations. Every day at midnight, German operators change the rotor settings according to codebooks. Every message sent uses a different starting position. The mathematical permutations are staggering. 158 quintillion 962 quadrillion 555 trillion 217 billion 826 million 360,000 possible configurations. In HUD-8, a team of male cryptanalysts led by a young, disheveled mathematician named Alan Turing works 18-hour days trying to break the German naval Enigma. Joan watches them hunched over intercepted messages, scribbling calculations, arguing about rotor positions and plugboard settings. She watches them fail day after day, while in the Atlantic, German U-boats sink merchant vessels by the dozen. 40 ships lost in the last week alone. Supplies that Britain desperately needs, food, fuel, ammunition, tumbling to the ocean floor because the Navy can't read the U-boat positions being transmitted in unbreakable cipher. The frustration in HUD-8 is palpable. Hugh Alexander, a championship chess player, throws his pencil across the room one afternoon. "It's impossible," he mutters. "Even with the bombs running day and night, we need a way to narrow the search space." The bombs, electromechanical machines designed by Turing, clicking and whirring in their own dedicated building, testing thousands of rotor positions per hour. Brilliant machines, but still not fast enough. Joan continues filing her cards, but her mind works differently now. She's stopped simply transcribing. She's reading. Every message that crosses her desk, she absorbs: call signs, preambles, operator signatures, patterns that the men at the main table, focused on their grand mathematical architectures, seem to overlook. It's Margaret who first notices Joan's annotations. "You're adding notes," she whispers during their tea break, nodding at the index cards. "The commanders would have a fit." "The commanders don't look at index cards," Joan replies quietly. "They're beneath their notice." She shows Margaret what she's found. The same call sign appearing repeatedly in messages sent at dawn. The same operator's distinctive typing rhythm. 2 quick taps on the spacebar between words. The way certain German radio men habitually start messages with weather reports, always in the same format. Margaret leans closer. "You think this could help narrow the crib?" A crib, cryptanalysis terminology for a known or guessed piece of plaintext that might correspond to a portion of the encrypted message. If you know what a message says, you can work backward to determine the Enigma settings that produced it. "I think," Joan says carefully, "that German radio operators are human, and humans are creatures of habit." March 9, 1940. 2:17 a.m. Joan should be asleep in her billet at the Shoulder of Mutton pub in Bletchley town. But instead she's sitting at her desk in the empty HUD-8, surrounded by 3 months of index cards spread across every available surface. The single overhead bulb casts harsh shadows. Her tea has gone cold hours ago. She's found something. A German naval operator, she's nicknamed him Franz in her notes, transmits from U-boat position reports in the North Atlantic every morning between 0600 and 0620 hours. Always the same call sign, DKR. And every single message, for 73 consecutive days, has begun with the exact same 5-letter sequence when encrypted, WOXPJ. No cipher should produce the same encrypted output from the same plaintext using different daily settings. Unless Joan's pencil moves rapidly across her notepad. Unless Franz is spectacularly lazy. Unless he's starting every message with the same German phrase. Wettervorhersage, perhaps, weather forecast. Or Marine Gruppen Kommando, Naval Group Command. If she's right, if Franz uses the same opening every single morning, then she's found a crib. A golden, repeatable crib that could allow the bombs to test rotor positions against a known plaintext ciphertext pair. The search space could be narrowed from billions to millions. The bombs could solve it in hours instead of never. Her hands are shaking as she compiles the data. All 73 messages, organized by date, showing the pattern. It's irrefutable. It's brilliant. It's also 2:43 in the morning, and she's a woman whose job description is clerical assistant. She waits until 8 a.m., when Hugh Alexander arrives, bleary-eyed, carrying his breakfast of toast and marmalade wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. Joan intercepts him before he reaches his desk. "Mr. Alexander, I need 3 minutes of your time." He blinks at her, clearly trying to remember her name. "Miss Clark, is it? I'm afraid I've got rather a full morning. I found a repeating crib in the North Atlantic U-boat transmissions." The toast stops halfway to his mouth. "You've what?" Joan spreads her index cards across his desk, talking rapidly now, explaining Franz and his 73 identical encrypted openings, walking Alexander through the statistical probability that this represents the same plaintext encrypted with different daily keys. She shows him her analysis of likely German naval phrases, ranked by letter frequency and length. Alexander's expression shifts from skepticism to attention to something approaching excitement. He calls across the room, "Turing, you need to see this." Alan Turing approaches, shirt rumpled, eyes red-rimmed from another sleepless night. Joan explains again, her voice steadier now, while both men examine her cards. The silence stretches. Joan can hear her own heartbeat. Turing picks up one of the cards, holds it to the light, sets it down, picks up another. His finger traces the pattern of encrypted sequences. Finally, he looks at Joan directly for what might be the first time since she arrived at Bletchley Park. "How long have you been tracking this operator?" 94 days, sir. The pattern solidified at day 73. "And you compiled this analysis? When, exactly?" "Last night, sir." Turing's expression is unreadable. Then he turns to Alexander. "Run it through Bomb 3. Use Wettervorhersage as the primary crib, Mariniggruppen Commando as secondary." He looks back at Joan. "If this works, Miss Clark, you may have just given us the Atlantic." By noon, Bomb 3 has cracked the day's Enigma settings using Joan's crib. By 1400 hours, Hut 8 is reading German U-boat positions in real time. By week's end, the Admiralty is quietly rerouting convoys around wolf packs that don't know they've been compromised. Merchant ship losses in the North Atlantic drop by 41% in March alone. Joan is moved from her clerical desk to the cryptanalysis table. No ceremony, no announcement. She simply arrives one morning to find a chair waiting beside Turing's workspace. Margaret joins her 2 days later, her linguistic expertise suddenly relevant, now that the value of pattern recognition has been demonstrated. Within a month, 6 more women are pulled from typing pools and filing rooms, their mathematical and analytical talents finally acknowledged. But the transformation isn't celebrated. It's almost invisible. When reports are written for military commanders, the breakthroughs are attributed to the cryptanalysis team or simply to Turing himself. Joan doesn't mind initially, the work is what matters. Breaking Enigma variants, finding new cribs, developing faster methods. The intellectual challenge she was promised, finally delivered. By 1943, Bletchley Park employs over 7,000 people. Nearly 6,000 of them are women. They operate the bombs, the massive code-breaking machines that now fill entire buildings, clicking through rotor combinations day and night. They staff the intercept stations, transcribing German radio traffic with perfect accuracy under headphones for 8-hour shifts. They analyze traffic patterns, compile intelligence reports, maintain the logistics that keep Station X functioning. In Hut 6, Mavis Lever, just 19 years old, breaks the Italian naval Enigma, leading to the British victory at Cape Matapan. In the Numenry, Dorothy Duboisson helps develop statistical techniques for breaking the Lorenz cipher, Hitler's personal communication system. Margaret Rock identifies the crucial flaw in the Abwehr Enigma used by German intelligence. These women, teenagers, university graduates, debutantes who should be planning garden parties, are instead shortening the war by an estimated 2 to 4 years. Yet even within Bletchley, the recognition remains grudging. Women cryptanalysts are paid less than their male counterparts. Joan earns 2/3 of what men in equivalent positions receive. When King George VI visits in 1941 to observe the vital war work, he's introduced exclusively to male section heads. The women receive a collective nod. Joan doesn't expect fanfare. None of them do. But there's a bitter irony in the way their contributions are minimized even as they prove indispensable. The same commanders who dismissed them as mere typists now depend on their insights to win the war, yet still refer to them as the girls in official memoranda. When victory finally comes in May 1945, the work at Bletchley Park is immediately classified. The Official Secrets Act seals their lips for 3 decades. Joan returns to civilian life, her war service reduced to a vague, clerical position in the civil service on her CV. The brilliant mathematical work, the cryptographic innovations, the lives saved, all of it buried under official silence. Margaret becomes a librarian in Edinburgh. Mavis marries and raises children in the countryside, never mentioning to her neighbors that she once changed the course of naval warfare. Dorothy works as a statistician, her pioneering techniques forgotten. For 30 years, they carry the secret alone, watching male Bletchley veterans receive honors and recognition, while their own contributions remain erased from history. It isn't until the 1970s, when the Official Secrets Act finally loosens, that the truth begins emerging. Joan Clark, by then in her 50s, gives her first interview about Bletchley Park in 1974. The interviewer seems surprised that a woman contributed to breaking Enigma. Joan smiles patiently and explains, as she's had to explain her entire life, that mathematics doesn't discriminate by gender. Only mathematicians do. The final reckoning comes slowly. Historians piece together the true story from declassified documents and aging memories. The British public learns that while their generals dismissed female codebreakers as glorified secretaries, those same women were decrypting the messages that won the Battle of the Atlantic, secured the Mediterranean, and paved the way for D-Day. Intelligence estimates suggest Bletchley Park shortened the European war by 2 years, preventing perhaps 14 million additional deaths. And 3/4 of the people who made that miracle possible were women whose names appeared on no honors list, whose achievements earned no medals, whose brilliance was rewarded with silence. Joan Clark passes away in 1996, finally recognized, though belatedly, as one of the finest cryptanalysts of her generation. At her funeral, one of her Bletchley colleagues delivers the eulogy. He speaks of her mathematical genius, her unshakable patience, her crucial breakthroughs. But he also speaks of that February morning in 1940, when she arrived at an unremarkable railway station, her talents dismissed before she'd even entered the building. They told her she was there to file papers, he says, voice thick with emotion. She stayed to save the world. The women of Bletchley Park didn't crack Enigma first because they were women. They cracked it because they were brilliant, meticulous, and determined, and because they refused to accept that their gender defined their capabilities. The British generals who dismissed them learned, eventually, what Joan Clark knew from the beginning. Intelligence respects no boundaries except those we artificially impose. The story of Bletchley Park is often told as the story of Alan Turing, and rightfully so, for his contributions were extraordinary. But it's also the story of 6,000 women who fought the war with mathematics instead of rifles, who saw patterns where others saw noise, who proved that genius wears no uniform and answers to no gender. They were told they couldn't. They did it anyway.